I work at George Mason Career Services as an employer engagement consultant. I'm a communicator and met a lot of you, but I wanted to welcome and say thank you so much for coming to our first ever Black male faculty and staff retreat. I say first ever, but hopefully not the last. This is an enjoyable experience. I would love to do this again. Just kind of have a rough agenda for today. We're going to have a welcome remarks. We're going to have introduction to the Mari research project that I'm working on as a PhD student here at George Mason University. A few breaks. We're going to have a great presentation by Dr. Bird about enrollment, another break, and then we'll have a group activity. And so if you have to leave throughout the day, I just ask that you take a moment and fill out, use the QR code to give us some feedback to the feedback form if you had to cut out. Additionally, if I don't care if you get up, we have a Pass for Patriots. Please send good news, good vibes to other people. And Brother Atkins was so kind to have brought us some swag, so we got a little bit of a raffle. So you got the chance here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, seven chances.
We're just gonna
come on in. And so, hey, someone's gonna leave as a winner. You can text right there. So let's go ahead and get started to the next slide. So just kind of wanted to bring the formation of this group. During COVID, it was a pretty bad time, I would say individually, being fully transparent, isolated. I'm an extrovert to the extrovert. Being at home, my 2 kids burnt. And particularly as racial unrest started to happen around the country, the murdering of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, I needed community. I needed people to connect with. And so for those that have been here at Mesa for a while, you probably remember early on, sent out a Zoom link and said, hey, let's just have some dialogue with community over that summer 2020. Very fortunately, former VP of HR was Lester Arnold. He was a frat, and he was able to guide me in the correct process to start an employer resource group, which I did not know anything about. But from that, we've been able to connect, grow the group to about 112, 115 people on the listserv, various faculty, staff, student, even graduate students, because in my mind, if they're a graduate assistant, they're working at the university. So we do have some student staff involved in this group as a way to foster community, belonging, and healing. And I would say full transparency, having this group for me has been very healing to know that I have extensions throughout the campus community to ask questions, to ask advice, to communicate with, have informal or formal mentorship. And so what I really want to welcome to everyone as we begin this retreat is please, please, please do not think of this as a silo. Think of this as an opportunity to connect with each other, foster collaboration and relationships that can yield a lot of things for your departments. I got some get to know each other cards, icebreaker cards. I really want this to foster community because I know for me, and this seems very egocentric, but for me, community has healed me. And so I hope that I can have that offering or that space for all other Black males as they navigate George Mason University. And so I'm really, really excited for today. I've been dreaming about it, planning it. It got canceled by the snow, but it's actually here today. And we're really just think about this employer resource group is ours. This employer resource group is for us as Black men. And so throughout the day, or think of ways that you want to contribute to that, whether it's jumping in on the Microsoft Teams and sharing announcements of things that you're doing in your office, or setting up walks or lunches or happy hours. I want this to be the incubator for new ideas as well as fostering new relationships. So thank you so much for taking your time. I apologize that if you drove all the way to my house, at least you know that I live in a big house, stunting on everybody. But you already knew. But I still have a Mason paycheck, so don't, I'm house rich. But with that being said, I really, I'm already in a space of gratitude, whether it's 5, 6, 2 people here today. the fact that you took your time to join us means a lot. So thank you so much.
Yeah, so my role today, I believe, is to talk about the Mari grant. So my name is Sammy Steen. I'm on the faculty in the College of Education and Human Development. My background is in counseling, so I teach master's and doctoral students to become therapists, basically, in community centers and in school settings. So that's my background. Phil and I met on the walks, quite frankly. I can't remember when I first met Phil, but if you know Phil, which I'm sure everyone does, he wants to be the mayor of George Mason. That's a fact. He said that one time. I was like, okay, it makes sense now. It's not like he's covering that up. And when Phil, when something doesn't go well, he doesn't take it well initially, but he finds another way to make it happen. And so what I'm about to talk about is a mentorship through it used to be called MARI or MARI, Mentoring Anti-Racism and Inclusive Excellence, MARIE. We've since been massaging that word anti-racism, and so I believe it means like access to research and inclusive excellence. And the first time he applied for the grant, he would have gotten it, but he didn't have enough credits as a PhD student. So imagine that, a loophole. So rather than let Phil kind of waddle in his sorrow, I said, Phil, let's just keep going and doing what you're doing anyway, because all this work that you started based on sort of your own personal need to make a community here at Mason, don't let this funding or this grant opportunity prevent you from moving forward. So we just kept pushing through. So I met Phil on walks, I believe. I can't remember the first time I met him. And then he was having luncheons, Zoom calls, all these other things. When I came to Mason in 2019, I actually wanted to avoid the spotlight. Like, I was trying to hide. Because I've been at universities where I was one of only a few Black folks, right? They want to poster you on the bulletin board about, come here, the diversity initiative. Or they ask you to do all this service over here, but then when it's time to go for tenure and promotion, I wasn't prepared. So I made sure I came to Mason, I was coming home, my family was getting back together, kind of integrated, because I was commuting all the way to Tucson, back and forth, long story. And I was just quietly doing my thing. Then Phil's like, come on, let's go. We're doing these walks. And I meet a few brothers in here. Oh, we're also having these things over here. And I didn't really want to do that. But when this Mari grant came up, he asked me, could I mentor him in the research? And I knew he was a PhD student, so I said, great. So Phil, he got this grant. And the cornerstone is to actually provide a space for people to engage in this anti-racism and inclusive excellence. That's what it came from, the provost's office. It came from the president through the provost, and it went out to the graduate schools and also master's students. And so now I'm mentoring 3 students. Phil is one of them. And ideally, we'll be focusing on racial and gender exploration, right? So we were trying to be inclusive in like this whole identity, this whole spectrum of identity. So race and gender and how folks see themselves. But we know primarily when you see us, you see Black folks, Black and brown folks, right? So we want to emphasize that. And then we wanted to make sure that people feel connected, open to joining without feeling any pressure. So the overarching aim, this is work that he was already doing, we just captured it into a research study, is to create supportive and inclusive spaces for Black men at right faculty and staff. There's no hierarchy here. I know many of us know what it's like to be one of few. So when we're part of a larger body, it's just more power, more connection, more influence. But both faculty and staff at Mason. And then the overarching research question here is like, what impact can organized and structured groups? And that part is important. So these organized and structured groups are the things I mentioned earlier. Going for a walk, we would go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and everybody couldn't always come, and sometimes it was 2 people, sometimes it was 6 people. That's a structured group. Or these Zoom calls that continue to happen, or luncheons at sort of Ike's or wherever they're going. So these organized structured groups have on recruitment, retention, and resistance of Black males within higher education. And so we were thinking, okay, those are the overarching research questions. What are some of the explicit questions tied to those 3 R's? One is, what made you want to come to Mason, right? And if you think just in your own mind, we'll seek some of you out to answer this question in an interview or quantitatively through some surveys, but what made you come? I know my story, why I wanted to come. There were 2 senior faculty who had left, and there was a gap year at Mason. I pursued my PhD in 2008 from Mason, so I was a former student. But you don't want to work at the same place you get your PhD because they always see you as a student. So I left. I got recruited to come back 2 different times, but the advisor was still here. When they retired, I came back. So that's why I came to Mason, is to sort of take on this legacy that had already been established at this institution, who was already pretty progressive. Retention. You might be thinking, well, why have you stayed at Mason 4 or 5 years like Alan? Why have you been here since 2019? There have been storms that we've been weathering along, or was it 2020? There have been storms that have been weathered along the way, but you think like, well, what will keep you here? And then the last question is, what are some of the work resistance, right? We're thinking like, at first we were going with
resilience.
But that term resiliency, I do a lot of work with children and adolescents, if you're not careful, the onus goes on to the child to be resilient in the face of adversity. And so we wanted to consider that, right? We know that that's a good trait, right? But why is it that the student has to adjust or be sort of resilient in the face of adversity? We feel like resistance has a more positive connotation attached to it. So it becomes more inclusive, like focus on what actually is working. So what are some of your work accomplishments this year? Because when we have failures or struggles, we can combat those with things that are actually working well. So that's the question we're trying to get. So Phil, you can help me out here. So the conceptual framework, the positionality, we'll start with that, then we'll get to the conceptual framework. Like, this is important. In research, we know that I have to acknowledge my biases or sort of the positionality I hold or how I show up in this research. And it's critical that we really directly go into that, because you can hear Phil talking how connected he is to this work. Hey, it was because of the support I needed. I'm a Black male working in higher ed in Northern Virginia. And so I identify as Black male, I identify as a Christian person, I identify as an academic, but primarily my major sort of centering is Black male, father, academic, and one who wants to quietly go about doing the work to make an impact. And when there are opportunities to focus on center Black people, do it unapologetically. So that's where I am. But I acknowledge that, so I'm biased. So whether 2 people came or 20 people came or all 60 showed up, I'm thrilled to be here and recognizing how important this moment really is. How would you sort of capture your identity?
And I think that I'm glad that we brought up the conceptual framework as a researcher or a budding researcher. That's something I'm always learning too, is that what is my internal lens already before I go into my research. So introspection is key and critical to that. And so first, I do identify as a Black male, father of 2, husband, a member of George Mason University's community, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I have NAACP, I have these leading salient identities. And so I wanted to make sure that no matter what my journey in regards to my PhD, those salient identities were represented in my studies. I could have just easily said I wanted to do on the whole entire Black diaspora, but for me, and in regards to this subgroup, I wanted to focus on literature and research that was really intersectional with my identities. Also understanding that, similar to what Dr. Steen said, that the Black experience in America is not monolithic, as well as the Black experience at Mason is not monolithic. And so that is why going into this framework, we probably will ask some demographic questions, such as how long have you been at Mason? What are some of your other intersectional identities? So that it can inform us that there might be some nuances to why you came to Mason, why you stayed at Mason, and what successful accomplishments you have and or barriers that you have that are unique to those intersections, right? Being a Black male, maybe even in my office, I might have unique barriers that Kyle might not have, or Mo might not have, based on certain identities and maybe identities of the ones that are in my immediate sector. That's kind of leading into our conceptual framework, and Dr. Steen is going to go further on in some of the core theories. And so, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, it's a lead in. You can help me with the top 2. So I'll start with the bottom one. So we think the conceptual framework is gonna also help us be able to look at the data through this lens. So I told you about positionality, we're biased, but we're also open to what we might learn, not assuming that everybody's gonna have the same experience. And then these major conceptual pieces here around belonging and connectedness, I think it's just critical, right? So how can you be successful in the space if you don't feel like you belong or you don't feel like you're connected? I mean, we try to do it all the time, but Phil came here and said, hey, let me draw attention to this to be more palatable. And so that's one thing, but then it leads to well-being. So if you feel like you belong and you're connected, maybe your well-being will go up. So we're looking for that. We're trying to say, what is the data outside of Mason that's related to these concepts that then we can apply here? So well-being might be like, is there a place where you can go and actually work out? Or are there chats for Patriot and do people actually participate in that? And some of the other things that Phil's doing, like the walks, that literally leads to health and wellness too. So we're walking, but we're also counseling each other when we're having these conversations. Social mobility and social capital, pretty straightforward in terms of that. But as you think about it, Phil, what goes on in your mind in terms of conceptual framework?
So I'm studying, my first class with Dr. Ed Maybach. We had to actually think of a communication theory and really explicate it, right? And so the ones I was always drawn to, social capital theory and social mobility. And social capital, just in this is a really rough definition. Think about your reputation in a financial sense, right? Financial capital. When you think of that, right, you invest in stock, and unbeknownst to you, similar to that financial capital, it grows, right? And then, kind of like stock, if the market's good, you can cash in. Well, think about that in regards to social capital theory, is that we have these different touch points or networks that, unbeknownst to us, our reputation, the people that we're connected to, will yield opportunities. That is growing out there in the ethos, right? Think about all the opportunities that have come to you based on that, like, it's not who you know, but who knows you kind of thing. And so I want to think about, in that framework of this theory, maybe tease it out, was your recruitment tied to that, right? Did you find out about opportunities at Mason because of your social capital? Or did you stay here because of your social capital? Because you built a network around Mason? Or did you thrive here at Mason because of your extension to your network? And then kind of lying, because social capital and social mobility are very intersectional, is that think about the opportunities to elevate within your spheres, right? Marginalized groups historically have not had the same yield of social mobility as our white counterparts or professionals, right? The opportunities that are yielded for advancement based on who they know is not afforded to the same groups, marginalized groups, ethnic groups. So think about, if we increase, thoughtfully, if we increase our connections, our networks, our extensions to other professionals, ideally, we should be able to visibly see the same, pipeline and opportunities for advancement in social mobility. So that also does intersect, because if you feel good, you feel like well-being wise, if you feel like you have an extension of a network, you feel there's no lessening of isolation, lessening of depression, anxiety, because you feel like you have a group around you. And you feel, I think we went to Gallup, and they said they're doing a study on whether Black people feel like they're thriving in America, which, interestingly enough, they said 52% of African Americans self-identify as saying they're thriving. And some of the pillars they had was, one of the pillars, which ties in that social, is that they feel like they have opportunities for career advancement. That directly ties to your sense of well-being, is that the work I do will allow me to advance in my career and advance in my economic status. And so social mobility is really tied in that, and social theory. And then lastly, belonging and connectedness. I think we had a professor, I can't remember his name, I'm gonna say it, I'll find it later, but he has thoroughly analyzed the sense that belong. How many people know the difference between being alone and lonely? So think about this. Being alone is a physical state. I'm by myself. I'm alone. Being lonely is a psychological state, meaning I'm alone, I'm not around, I don't have people. So you think about it in this sense. You can be in a room full of people and feel lonely. On the inverse, you can be completely by yourself and still feel connected to others and not feel alone, right? Like I know I can always reach out to someone. So understanding that sense of belonging and connectedness as it ties to well-being and all the other conceptual frameworks, will be able, hopefully, ideally, with thorough research, surveys, and interviews, be able to tease that out and see what are the common themes that align with all this.
And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. What I want to add, as Phil's bringing closer to this slide, is a positive sort of growth mindset, this removing deficits. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to capture this like, oh, Black folks are struggling and therefore we need to provide these resources. It's not that at all. We want to feel connected. Basically, we want to belong, but on our own time. I'm speaking first person, but on my own time, I don't feel like I have to go to everything that has Black men centered on that. That's not what we're saying either. So we're removing this deficit approach so that we can help people understand. We're not arguing. We're not angry. We're just trying to shed light on sort of the excellence that we do bring to the table. So the focus is on recruitment, retention, and resistance. We talked about that. And so here's some definitions for those, right? The act of finding new people to join an organization or support a cause. That's what it is. Did you have a question? Your hand was up? When we shut the door? The older I get, I can't. I hear you. The next one, so the retention definition. Employee retention is the organizational goal of keeping productive and talented people here, basically, right? But we slap on there Black folks, Black men. And then resistance, the ability to not be affected by something, especially adversely affected. So how do you counteract, or how do you combat the racism, sometimes internal, right? Sometimes external, or the oppressive environments we might find ourselves typically in higher ed spaces? How do we combat that? How do we do that? And we're hoping through these walks and talks and these luncheons and these resource groups and just knowing that we're part of a larger listserv. And even if we're not always showing up in all these spaces, we are connected. Does that in fact actually help? So uniquely, Phil, his background is in communications. I don't know everything about Phil, but I always learn something new about him every day. So I knew about this podcast, but I didn't know he had 400 episodes of the podcast, right? Right? You got, 380? I don't know.
345.
Right. So he always doing that. So all these different things. So we taken this approach of a mixed design. And a mixed design, it can be challenging because, like, let's just say we were taking one type of design, like a quantitative research design or this type. In this case, it matches more closely with Phil's work style. That's just what I'm going. Phil wants to do everything. So this retreat is a part of the design. It's like, hey, I want to bring people here and draw their attention or draw some energy or some content from them. So that's what we're trying to do here. So the mixed design includes qualitative, which is some interviews with a few folks that might agree to do that. And quantitatively, we worked on several surveys. There's a short one for this retreat, but then there are a few other ones we're working through to see, because we want to make it we don't want too many questions on there. Then the qualitative allows folks to tell their story. And then ideally, we hope to take snippets out of these, again, to frame in a more positive manner, a documentary about like why folks, how Black men have managed to do so well here in Mesa, if in fact that's the case. And what are some of the challenges and barriers, and what's some insight that we can provide for people, particularly in this current socio-political climate in which we find ourselves here at Mason. I mean, I don't know about you all. When the president was hired, in my mind, I was thrilled because first we had a person that identified as Hispanic, right? He hadn't been here for a while. Then a Black man's coming. This is unbeknownst to us that the pandemic or this social unrest was going to happen, but they had hired him. I was very proud to be at a place that hired George Washington. Not like some of the places did after the pandemic hit, like, oh, where's the most educated Black man we can live in this world? We hired him prior to that. Now, where are we and how they're responding to him? I'm not really sure, but it doesn't seem like the same enthusiasm. But it seems to me his message hasn't changed. He's still been consistent in how we approach this thing. So the point of this is like, hey, how can we help fight that cause? I'm engaging in that work. Anyhow, Phil was doing it, and now we're capturing it in a research project, but ideally it will be something tangible that people can really react to. And next week, or maybe 2 weeks from now, there's a conference. It used to be called the Anti-Racism Inclusive Excellence. Now it's the Access to Research and Inclusive Excellence. Is anybody going to that conference and know what I'm referring to? Did anybody go last year? Yeah, it was like they put it together real quick, and this year it gave us a little bit more time, but I'm just happy that they're still doing it. You know, the name was a little bit weird. Did anybody react to the name?
They changed the name?
I didn't even know they changed it.
Yeah.
I didn't know they changed the name.
Anti-racism.
Yeah.
Now it's Access to Research.
Quiet change.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, good.
Yeah. Right, just keep pushing. So we need a few bullet points from you all. So in my mind, one recommendation of this research is like, make sure that Phil collaborates. I mean, he's gonna do that anyway, but collaborate intentionally so that it's not just through his lens, right? So we're collaborating. So this retreat is an opportunity to collaborate with people, to share this information out and then get some reaction to it. Any other recommendations from the snippet you heard me share about what Phil's trying to accomplish that you can throw out right now? And I'm gonna jot a few down. You hear where I'm going with that? Like recommendations on the research.
Maybe clean up the methods.
You say clean it up?
Yeah.
Tell me what you mean. What's
Yeah,
missing?
no, tell me.
What was that?
Yeah, Mo, I listen to Mo. Mo knows his research. Please share.
I mean, the mixed research design can be complicated, but when you were presenting the methods, it wasn't quite clear exactly what the method was. It was sort of accomplished as well.
Yeah, it's actually a combination of strategies. It's not like necessarily a methodology. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna write that down. That will come a little bit, that was maybe more of a cursory approach. So if I were to try to say like, is it an exploratory, is it like a mixed exploratory or explanatory or triangulated explanatory design? I'm thinking it would be. What I'm not sure is if the quantitative and qualitative are being captured simultaneously or is one informing the other. That's kind of in development because we don't have all the data, all the tools aren't created. But I'm gonna take your feedback about making sure that it's clear both academically and for laymen. That's what I'm hearing you say, Mo.
Yes.
Any other reaction to the research design other than the lack of clarity? Or anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Mo, please.
If it comes up, I'll definitely say something.
Yeah, no, the feedback is welcome. I mean, it's just it's not a personal attack. You know, it's like the whole point is to present it and to make sure it's accessible. But recognizing that the haters will come just simply because, I don't know about you, but I have gotten feedback about some of my research. Literally, why are you only writing about Black boys or Black men? You know, why this? And I'm like, well, I shouldn't have to apologize about that, but it's not like I only do that. But if I can get this piece of the puzzle correct, it might make access or make it a little more accessible for other people. But if I don't identify in some of these other ways, and you do, why don't you do that work? That's kind of where I end.
Well,
why do I need to do something?
And also, like I said, I'm only 3 classes in, and I'm not saying as an excuse. I'm saying as an invitation for those that are more scholarly or those that have more insight. I am open to feedback because it's the only way I get better. So, clarity or asking me questions makes me think of things I've never thought about because I'm actively learning this through my studies and I'm not an accomplished researcher at the end. I'm actually, a student that needs a mentor that is growing through this project. So ideally, this project is also going to help me transfer those skills to my actual PhD program. Because that's what I'm thinking. So
yeah.
I'm learning as I go along, learning about the appropriate ways to go about research, learning about the processes and academia, and definitely one that informs the other. I'm like, I don't know, I never thought about that before. And so I'm definitely open to feedback. Additionally, in the practicality part too, I'm open, you need to film like this, or you need to set up the angles like this, or use quadrics this way. I'm learning all those things for the first time.
And Mo, you were gonna say something else?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the method, so I captured some of the impact on retention was one of them. But some of the, I guess quantitative things I was just thinking of, when Phil opened up, I heard him say that there was like 115 people on this listserv. I mean, that could be something that you could kind of mine in terms of putting numbers in a quantitative sense, 13 people in this room, 13 participants in this room, so just some nuggets. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. I've been writing that down.
And I hear you saying strategies too. Any last comment? Yes, Louis, what's up?
Good morning. Hey, I was just thinking, if we're looking at retention and mobility around the folks that are here on this campus. So there's folks that are on the academic side and folks' career path that may be administrative or on the student services side. There are different narratives to how folks are moving in those lanes. So I thought that might be interesting to drill down a bit around some of like the whys, the hows in those different lanes, and what have been the success routes, and then what have been the barriers in particular, if they're academic or non-academic.
That's great.
Yes, I hear you say that back. I mean, it will be imperative that the folks who are responding are clear on the demographics, right? Because then that will tell what role or what job they're doing or where they are in the lane you pointed out, whether it's academic, admin, or student support services. Right? That's what I heard you say.
Yes, sir.
That makes a lot of sense because then you can sort of go back and maybe make some predictions. It just depends on how many folks actually respond, how large the sample is. So the grant was it's a year and we're in the middle of it. And at this point, he's going to present on Monday or the 18th, share some of the information that you have up to this date. Some will be from this conversation. And then we hope by December he has a documentary he can put out that kind of captures in a snapshot way some of the stuff that he learned over this process. So we built in a break now. I mean, we can keep plugging it along if y'all want to, based on the sample. If you need a break, we can set the time.
Yeah, let's take a break. In the interim, we'll do our first. I feel like he's doing this because I like doing good things. All right. Well, once again, thank you. I'm just going to unofficially say sponsored by Mason, Office of Branding, and the Black Alumni Chapter. Thank you. This wonderful package. Jamie, you win this Black Alumni one. Congratulations, Jamie. All right. I never seen it, but thank you so much. All right, well, we'll do some more breaks. Please get some water. We're gonna have, I believe, Dr. Bird next. Someone's gonna get our food, so we do have food. I did promise it, and I used the Mari funds, and I think I overpaid. So please take a few boxes home too. I thought like everyone's gonna come, like all these name tags. So we got all extra food, so please take a box when we do come. So in the interim, while you take a break, because we're gonna get started.
We have 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Pass for Patriots, well-being stuff, get to know each other, and then we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Do some more of these raffles. I just love them. I like activities. All right. And those online, I'm going to end this one, and then we're going to start it with another one. So thank you for those that are joining online.
Doing layers.
Right, I'm trying to turn my brain
Oh, nice.
Got that with this money. Because I'm going to do survey for Quadrants and concurrently.
Hey, John.
What's the setup you got over here?
Let's see. We got a live stream camera right
So
here.
can we close that now? Is it closed?
Is it?
Yeah, so we'll say in stream. Oh, first of all, say we'll be back. Oh, you didn't hit send. Yeah, hit send. and then tell everybody. Say, we're gonna close this link and join this one. Huh? So what now? Oh yeah. I mean, where you do that? Oh yeah.